Men do not live as they imagine they should, but as necessity commands them, and those who refuse to understand this truth are governed by illusion, not power. I do not speak to flatter your virtue, nor to comfort your conscience. I speak to those who wish to remain standing when others fall, to those who understand that the world rewards not innocence, but effectiveness. You have been taught that kindness earns loyalty, that honesty guarantees trust, that goodness protects you from harm. Experience teaches otherwise. In moments of pressure, men abandon gratitude, forget promises, and follow strength wherever it appears. Power does not belong to the most moral, but to the most clear-eyed. It favors those who act decisively, who command respect before seeking affection, and who understand when mercy preserves authority and when it destroys it. This is not a lesson in cruelty. It is a lesson in reality. For to ignore how the world truly works is the most dangerous naivete of all. If you wish to be safe, learn strength. If you wish to rule, learn perception. And if you wish to survive among men, never confuse being good with being weak. Niceness, when practiced without restraint or strategy, communicates something far more dangerous than kindness. It communicates the absence of power. In social hierarchies, people are constantly scanning for signals who can enforce boundaries, who can impose consequences, who must tolerate disrespect. Excessive niceness answers those questions immediately. It tells others that harmony matters to you more than leverage, that approval matters more than authority, and that you are willing to absorb costs to keep interactions smooth. This is not interpreted as moral superiority. It is interpreted as vulnerability. Human beings do not assess character in a vacuum. They assess behavior in context. When someone consistently yields, forgives quickly, avoids conflict, and softens their language to protect others' comfort, observers do not think, this person is good. They think, this person cannot afford to be difficult. Niceness becomes evidence of limited options. Power, by contrast, is associated with choice. The powerful can be generous because they are not dependent. The weak are generous because they are afraid of withdrawal, rejection, or escalation. Social dynamics reward those who create a slight tension around themselves. That tension comes from uncertainty. Will this person push back? Will there be consequences? Will access be withdrawn? Niceness removes that uncertainty. It guarantees predictability, and predictability invites testing. Once people sense that nothing bad happens when they overstep, overstepping becomes inevitable. What begins as small impositions slowly grows into disregard, then entitlement. Contempt. The nice person often feels confused at this stage, wondering why their goodwill was not reciprocated, unaware that goodwill without strength reads as submission. Virtue that is not backed by force does not command respect. This is not a moral judgment. It is a behavioral reality. Respect emerges when others believe your boundaries are real. Niceness often blurs boundaries in the hope that others will intuitively respect them. Most people respect what is enforced, not what is requested politely. When niceness replaces firmness, it trains others to negotiate against you, to push until they meet resistance that never arrives. There is also a deeper psychological component. Niceness is often driven by a desire to be seen as good, agreeable, or harmless. That desire creates dependency on external validation. Dependency is visible. People can sense when someone needs approval, and need invites control. The one who cares less about being liked holds the stronger position. Niceness, when compulsive, reverses this balance and hands power to whoever is willing to withhold warmth or approval. This does not mean cruelty or strength. It means that warmth must be optional, not automatic. When niceness is a choice rather than a reflex, it changes meaning entirely. Chosen kindness from a position of strength reads as generosity. Unchosen niceness from fear reads as weakness. The same behavior produces opposite interpretations depending on whether it is backed by the capacity to say no, to withdraw, to punish, or to leave. Social hierarchies are not built on stated values, but on observed consequences. People learn who matters by watching who can disrupt comfort without being punished. The nice person avoids disruption at all costs, and is therefore rarely taken seriously when stakes rise. In moments of competition, crisis, or scarcity, niceness collapses first, because it was never anchored in authority. What remains is resentment, exhaustion, and the quiet realization that being pleasant did not translate into being protected. In this sense, niceness is not a virtue, but a signal, and signals are interpreted ruthlessly. Until kindness is paired with a capacity for firmness, it will continue to announce weakness long before it announces goodness. Affection is unstable because it lives in emotion, and emotion shifts with circumstance, advantage, and fear. What makes someone liked today can make them disposable tomorrow. People admire kindness when it costs them nothing, but abandon it the moment loyalty becomes inconvenient. Respect, by contrast, does not depend on feeling. It depends on structure, consequence, and expectation. Where affection asks to be returned, respect demands to be acknowledged. This is why those who pursue being liked often find themselves betrayed, while those who insist on respect remain protected, even when disliked. Affection places power outside of you. When you want to be liked, your behavior becomes reactive. You adjust your words, soften your stance, and tolerate small violations to preserve approval. Each concession trains others that your boundaries are negotiable. Over time, your position weakens, not because others are malicious, but because you taught them that maintaining your comfort is your priority. Once people sense that you need their goodwill, they gain leverage over you. They can withdraw warmth, approval, or inclusion to shape your behavior. Affection becomes a leash. Respect reverses this dynamic. Respect is rooted in predictability and consequence. People may not like you, but they know where you stand, what you tolerate, and what happens if lines are crossed. This clarity creates stability. Even adversaries behave cautiously around those they respect, because respect implies cost. You do not need to threaten openly. The belief that you will act is enough. Respect does not require emotional closeness, only credibility. Human beings are pragmatic in their judgments. They align themselves with strength because strength offers safety. When choices become difficult, people abandon those they like. If those people cannot protect themselves or others, affection dissolves under pressure. Respect endures because it is tied to capability. A respected individual may be lonely, but they are rarely ignored. A liked individual may be surrounded, but they are often unsupported when it matters. There is also a moral illusion attached to affection. Many believe that being liked makes them good, and being respected makes them feared. Thesis false. Respect does not require cruelty. It requires the ability to disappoint others without collapsing, to enforce decisions without apology, and to accept temporary disapproval without retreat. The fear people associate with respect usually comes from unresolved guilt about asserting themselves. Those who are comfortable with their authority do not need to intimidate. Their presence alone establishes limits. Affection creates inconsistency because it depends on continuous maintenance. You must keep pleasing, keep agreeing, keep accommodating. The moment you stop, affection turns to resentment because people feel entitled to the version of you they benefited from. Respect does not create entitlement. It creates distance where needed, and distance preserves authority. People do not feel betrayed when a respected person says no. They expect Italiano. Expectations aligned with reality prevent conflict. In social and professional hierarchies, influence flows toward those who can withstand being disliked. Decisions that matter often upset someone. If your power depends on affection, you will avoid these decisions or dilute them until they are meaningless. This is why groups led by agreeable figures stagnate. They preserve harmony at the expense of direction. Respect-based leadership, however, accepts friction as the cost of movement. Progress is rarely comfortable. Affection flatters the ego in the short term but weakens position in the long term. Respect may feel colder, but it compounds. It creates space to act, to change course, to correct others, and to protect yourself without explanation. People may smile less, but they listen more. They comply not because they like you, but because they understand you matter. Ultimately, affection is a luxury. Respect is infrastructure. When circumstances are favorable, affection feels powerful. When circumstances turn hostile, only respect remains. Those who build their identity on being liked discover too late that liking offers no defense. Those who prioritize respect discover that even without love, they retain control, stability, and the freedom to act according to necessity rather than approval. People do not experience reality through intentions. They experience it through consequences. What you meant to do, hoped to do, or believed to be right dissolves the moment an outcome appears. Once results are visible, they replace every explanation. Society remembers who succeeded, not who tried honorably. This is not cruelty, but efficiency. In a world of limited attention and constant competition, people use outcomes as shortcuts for judgment. Results become proof of competence, justification for authority, and retroactive validation of methods. Intentions are private. Outcomes are public. Because intentions cannot be verified, they carry little weight in social evaluation. Anyone can claim good motives. Few can demonstrate effectiveness. This is why excuses sound hollow even when they are true. When something fails, observers instinctively conclude that better judgment, stronger will, or greater skill would have prevented it. Failure is interpreted as evidence of deficiency, regardless of moral purity. Success, on the other hand, is interpreted as wisdom, even when the path was messy, unethical, or accidental. Moral intent often functions as a psychological refuge. It allows individuals to preserve a positive self-image while avoiding responsibility for results. But the social world does not operate on self-image. It operates on impact. When decisions affect others, intentions are irrelevant unless they materialize into benefits. A leader who means well but produces chaos is not forgiven for their heart. A rival who delivers stability is respected despite their flaws. Power flows toward those who can shape reality, not those who can explain themselves eloquently. This dynamic creates a harsh asymmetry. Success sanitizes behavior. Once an outcome is favorable, people reinterpret the actions that led to it as necessary, bold, or visionary. Failure contaminates even ethical choices. The same decision praised in victory is condemned in defeat. This is why people who achieve results are granted narrative control. They are allowed to define the meaning of their actions after the fact. Those without results lose that privilege and are judged by standards that no longer protect them. Because of this, appealing to intention is often a sign of weakness. It signals that you lack the only defense that matters: proof. When someone emphasizes how hard they tried or how sincere they were, they are implicitly admitting that nothing tangible stands in their favor. The appeal may evoke temporary sympathy, but sympathy does not translate into authority or influence. At best, it delays dismissal. At worst, it invites condescension. Results also discipline memory. People forget the process once the outcome is fixed. The pain, sacrifice, or controversy along the way fades quickly. What remains is the final state and who is associated with it. This is why societies elevate winners as role models, regardless of how narrow, lucky, or ruthless their path was. The outcome becomes the lesson. Everything else becomes noise. Those who fail are told what they should have done differently, even when the advice contradicts what succeeded for others. This reality places a burden on anyone seeking influence. Good intentions must be subordinated to effectiveness, not abandoned, but translated into action that produces visible change. Wanting justice, fairness, or harmony is meaningless unless you can enforce structures that make those values real. Otherwise, your values remain personal preferences, easily overridden by those who can deliver outcomes without sharing them. There is also a psychological comfort in focusing on intention because it feels controllable. You cannot always control results, but you can always claim purity of motive. This creates a trap. People begin optimizing for how they feel about their choices rather than how those choices function in the world. Over time, this disconnect grows. The individual feels morally intact while their position erodes. When consequences finally arrive, they feel blindsided, unable to understand why their goodness did not protect them. The world does not punish intention, nor es italiano. What it responds to is leverage, capability, and consequence. Those who understand this stop arguing about what they meant and start designing actions that leave no ambiguity. They accept that judgment is external, not internal. They focus on building outcomes so clear that intention becomes unnecessary to explain. When results speak, motives are assumed. When results fail, motives are irrelevant. Every social interaction operates within a frame, whether acknowledged or not. The frame determines who leads, who reacts, what is acceptable, and what is out of bounds. Most people assume frames are neutral or mutual, but they are not. Someone is always setting the terms, even if by default. When you do not define the frame, you inherit one that serves someone else's interests. Control begins not with action, but with definition. Those who lack power tend to focus on responding well within existing rules. They aim to be polite, reasonable, and cooperative, believing that good behavior will be rewarded. This mindset keeps them trapped. By accepting the frame as given, they surrender initiative. They argue points instead of questioning premises, negotiate details instead of setting boundaries, and defend themselves instead of directing the conversation. Each response reinforces the other person's authority to decide what matters. Framing is subtle. It shows up in who asks questions and who answers them, who explains themselves and who does not, who apologizes and who expects apology. The one who explains is already in a weaker position, because explanation implies accountability. The one who defines expectations rarely needs to justify them. Over time, these small asymmetries compound into hierarchy. Power is not seized dramatically. It is conceded incrementally. Niceness often accelerates this process because it prioritizes harmony over direction. When someone values being agreeable, they adapt to the emotional climate of others. They mirror tone, soften demands, and accommodate discomfort. In doing so, they allow others to set the emotional and conversational frame. Once that happens, any attempt to assert control feels like a violation rather than a correction. The frame is hardened around them, and resistance now carries social cost. Control of the frame does not require dominance in volume or aggression. It requires certainty. Those who speak as if their assumptions are obvious invite compliance. Those who hesitate, qualify, or over-justify invite challenge. People instinctively test uncertainty. When they sense that someone is unsure of their own authority, they push. When they sense clarity, they adapt. The frame holder appears calm not because they are kind, but because they are not seeking permission. Being reactive is the clearest signal of lost control. Reaction places you in the temporal position of follower. You wait, then respond. You absorb pressure, then adapt. Even intelligent responses cannot erase the underlying dynamic. You are playing on someone else's field. Over time, this erodes leverage. The reactive individual becomes predictable, and predictability makes them manageable. The proactive individual, by contrast, introduces direction and uncertainty, which forces others to orient around them. Social frames also shape moral perception. Whoever controls the narrative defines what is reasonable, excessive, fair, or selfish. If you accept a frame that casts your boundaries as aggression or your needs as inconvenience, you will struggle to assert yourself without guilt. Frame control protects against this by normalizing your position before it is challenged. When your standards are presented as defaults rather than demands, opposition feels like deviation. This is why powerful figures rarely argue defensively. They restate expectations, redirect conversations, or disengage entirely. Silence, when used deliberately, is a framing tool. It communicates that the issue does not meet the threshold for response. Withdrawal of attention reframes importance. Those who need engagement lose ground. Those who can deny it, gain it. Framing also governs identity. If others consistently define you as helpful, agreeable, or flexible, they will resist any attempt you make to change that role. Roles are frames applied to people. Breaking them requires discomfort, which nice individuals avoid. But without that disruption, the frame remains intact. You continue to be treated according to an outdated script that no longer serves you. Control of the frame is not about manipulation for its own sake. It is about refusing to operate under assumptions that weaken you. It is about choosing the context in which your actions are interpreted. Once you establish the frame, behavior that once seemed harsh appears necessary, and behavior that once seemed unreasonable appears normal. Without control of the frame, even reasonable actions look like overreach. Those who understand this stop trying to win arguments and start deciding which arguments are allowed to exist. They recognize that power lies upstream, in definition rather than reaction. When you define the situation, you define the outcome. When you fail to do so, the outcome defines you. Mercy derives its meaning from contrast. It only registers when severity is possible. When forgiveness is offered by someone who lacks the capacity to punish, it is not experienced as generosity but as irrelevance. Authority gives mercy weight. Without authority, mercy becomes a hollow gesture, easily ignored or exploited. People do not feel gratitude for leniency if they never feared consequence. In the first place, they feel entitlement. What was once a favor quickly becomes an expectation. Power establishes the conditions under which mercy can function. When others believe you are capable of enforcing costs, your decision not to do so is interpreted as restraint. Restraint signals control. It tells observers that you are choosing calm over chaos, not that you are unable to act. This choice earns respect because it reflects surplus strength. Conversely, mercy from someone perceived as weak confirms their weakness. It reassures others that boundaries are negotiable and that violations will go unpunished. Contempt grows in the absence of consequence. It is not usually conscious or malicious. It emerges gradually as people test limits and discover there are none. Each act of forgiveness without correction reduces perceived risk. Over time, behavior escalates. What began as small disrespect becomes routine disregard. The merciful individual feels increasingly wronged, while those around them feel increasingly justified. Mercy, untethered from authority, corrodes the very relationships it aims to preserve. Authority is not cruelty. It is clarity. It defines what happens when lines are crossed. This clarity stabilizes interactions because people adjust their behavior to avoid predictable costs. Mercy, when applied selectively within the structure, becomes effective. It can de-escalate conflict, reinforce loyalty, and humanize power. But when mercy replaces structure instead of operating within it, chaos follows. People need to know where the edge is before they can appreciate being spared from falling off it. There is a psychological discomfort in exercising authority. Many associate enforcement with aggression or moral failure. As a result, they default to leniency to preserve a self-image of goodness. This self-protection comes at a price. By avoiding the discomfort of asserting limits, they absorb the long-term discomfort of being disrespected. Mercy becomes a way to postpone confrontation, not to resolve it. The cost is paid later, with interest. In hierarchies, mercy without authority disrupts order. Others observe that violations carry no costs and adjust accordingly. This undermines not only the merciful individual but the entire structure around them. Those who follow rules feel foolish, while those who break them feel empowered. Authority, once weakened, is difficult to restore without dramatic action. Early firmness prevents later severity. The refusal to enforce small boundaries often necessitates harsh enforcement later. Selective mercy requires judgment. It demands the ability to distinguish between error and defiance, between weakness and challenge. This discernment is impossible without authority. When you cannot impose consequences, every infraction looks the same, and every response feels futile. Authority provides the leverage needed to tailor responses. It allows mercy to function as a tool rather than a habit. People are loyal not to kindness alone, but to strength that chooses kindness. They trust those who can protect the group, enforce norms, and absorb conflict. Mercy from such figures feels safe. It reassures others that power is controlled, not arbitrary. Mercy from the powerless feels risky. It signals that no one is in charge, that order is fragile, and that opportunism will go unchecked. True mercy requires the courage to be firm first. It requires the willingness to be disliked in the short term to preserve respect in the long term. Without this foundation, mercy becomes indistinguishable from surrender. What is meant as compassion is received as permission, and once permission is granted, it is rarely withdrawn without resistance. What you have heard is not a rejection of kindness, nor an invitation to cruelty. It is a warning against confusion. The world does not operate on what should be rewarded, but on what consistently works. Those who mistake goodwill for power, intention for impact, affection for security, or mercy for strength learn this lesson only after it costs them something. Power is not loud. It is not emotional. It is not concerned with appearing virtue. Power is quiet. Clarity, the ability to decide, to enforce, to withdraw, and to endure being misunderstood. It belongs to those who accept reality as it is, not as they wish it to be. If you choose to be kind, let it be a choice, not a reflex. If you choose to be merciful, Let it come from authority, not fear. If you choose to lead, accept that respect matters more than approval. The greatest mistake is not being harsh. It is being weak while pretending to be good. The world does not punish morality, but it exploits naivete. Survival, influence, and stability belong to those who understand this distinction and act accordingly. In the end, you are judged not by what you meant, but by what you made possible. Choose strength first. From that foundation, everything else, kindness, mercy, even virtue can finally matter.